Welcome, witches, wizards, and muggles alike, to another enchanting episode of Magical Tales from the Slytherin Common Room, bringing your favorite Harry Potter fanfiction to audio format. So sit back, relax, and lock your headphones and let the magic begin. Apostasy by Deydralinne. Chapter 45, Restoration. The flash of the camera blinded her temporarily while the reporter's hands trembled. Huddled in the corners of the shadows were people whispering and staring nervously at Dumont and Pusey's teams working together with the building's crew to restore one shop's storefront. Next to her, Tom was answering another journalist's questions about their community rebuilding day. They had another team working on restoring Hogwarts alongside experts in construction restoration for sentient buildings that they had brought in from Ireland as part of a trade deal that Hermione had negotiated. Tom would be leaving shortly to go with the media team to capture some of the progress happening there. Hermione, however, had opted to remain here in Diagon Alley and help Adrian smooth over some of the locals. It was their hope that they could have Diagon Alley restored to functionality by the end of the week. So far, they had yet to run into any issues, but perhaps that was because Draco was glaring at anyone who so much gave them a second unkind glance. He hadn't said much since they had arrived. Hermione wondered if perhaps that was largely due to the fact that the last time they were here, she had nearly died. Ginny and Blaise had both chosen to attend the Hogwarts restoration instead for that exact reason. She could understand that what had happened to her here had been horrific and had nearly cost her her life, but it had just been another byproduct of war. For Ginny, however, it had been so much more traumatic. So far, they had fixed the old florist, the menagerie, and a sweet shop. But so much destruction had been done to Diagon Alley over the years that the majority of the streets still had damage to repair in varying degrees. The apothecary was next, and she hoped that the proposed business grant would entice people within the United Kingdom to help get businesses back up and running by offering them small business loans and discounted leases. Where possible, the ministry employees were currently trying to locate rightful business owners who had occupied the stores previously. But unfortunately, it was proving rather dismal as many of them had died or fled overseas. Not all places had closed down or been abandoned. The Leaky Cauldron, for one, had never stopped running. A small specialty grocer, the post shop, and of course, Flourish and Blot's, though it was now only Blot. Everywhere she went, Draco followed closely behind. She wasn't really here to be involved with the manual labor side of things and was more assigned to oversee the project for media coverage purposes. The crews of laborers that had come from Ireland were making fast work of the structural repairs. Ireland had agreed to help with the restoration while they deliberated over what it would mean for their people if the statute of secrecy was removed. But Hermione was hopeful that they would see the benefits extended to both Muggle and Wizarding populations. "Would you stop hovering?" she hissed at Draco. After last time, abso-fucking-lutely not. Draco quipped back, glaring down a wizard as he walked by on his way to the Leaky Cauldron. The greasy-haired man was cowering under the following gaze. Hermione turned around and whacked Draco lightly in the stomach. "Seriously, if you're not going to behave, you can go home. You are not helping our image, sulking and broody and intimidating everyone. We are trying to get people to trust us. Remember, to trust Tom. It's not going to help if you're following me around like a feral guard dog." "Oh, I am I?" Draco smirked and pulled her against him, a cheeky smirk taking residence on his face. "Maybe if you would stop trying to die on me." Hermione rolled her eyes at the dramatics and silenced him with her hand over his mouth, to which Draco raised an eyebrow. "Enough. You make it sound like a daily occurrence, and I'm sick of hearing it. I am fine. I am alive and well and getting pissed off with you treating me like I'm about to drop dead in the street," she said quietly. Draco's face softened. "I can't help it," he mumbled behind her hand. "Geneva isn't here. If someone attacks..." Hermione rolled her eyes. "Relax, would you? I don't even think Kingsley or Ron are stupid enough to attack in front of the reporters." Hermione peered into a shop beside her. Despite the front windows being smashed, what had once been Fred and George's joke shop remained relatively untouched. Apparently, it wasn't something many people sought supplies from. George was listed as one of Diagon Alley's previous tenants who had fled the country, and his role within the order had been minimal enough that he seemed to have slipped under the radar. At least for now, the truth would likely come to light when they dug deeper into it. She hoped that wherever George was, he was staying out of trouble. I can't help but worry, Draco's voice allowed some of the vulnerability to come through. Hermione took his hand and led him down the street, meandering slowly and observing as glass was repaired and stones put back into the walls they had fallen from. Psst, excuse me, miss, a nervous-looking woman whispered from the shadows. Draco immediately straightened, but Hermione shot him a warning glare before he could scare away the young lady who had no doubt been living it rough if her appearance was anything to go by. Yes, can I help you? Hermione asked with a small smile, stepping closer to her. I was just... The witch eyed Draco warily, and Hermione shot him another warning glare. I was just wondering, what will happen to my mother's shop? Hermione brightened. Oh, which one was your mother's shop? Hermione scanned the buildings as if there would be a woman waiting for her. One of the things that Tom had very little interest in, but had spent a great deal of time claiming to care about, was restoring leases to rightful owners where possible. It was a good look for the PR front. It was the florist, Flo's florist, the witch whispered. Hermione looked at the newly finished building. Its sign had been repaired and rehung, a wooden sign painted green with white writing and a little decorative flowers in the corners. It was only a small slither of a store, shoved in between the post shop and the apothecary. And where's your mother? Hermione turned back to the witch, dirt covering her clothes and exposed skin. The witch's eyes turned distant and sad. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. She was caught in the fires that those people who attacked the other month set. 7 years we laid low. We kept out of everyone's way and stayed alive. Only for her to die because they didn't like who the Wizengamot appointed minister, she whimpered, as she explained. Beside her, Draco lost his aggressive stance. My name is Draco Malfoy, and this is Hermione Granger. Phelan. My mother was Flora. Phelan nodded. Nice to meet you. Have you been living in the shop? Draco asked in a hushed tone. Phelan hesitated, but eventually nodded. Okay, well, why don't we get you put in a room at the Leaky for now? We can have Raven help you get back in there as quickly as possible, assuming you want it to still be a florist. Phelan stared back at him in shock. I can keep the store? Well, there are technicalities that will need to be checked, obviously, but wherever possible, we are trying to minimize the turnover. Our primary goal is to keep leases where possible. If you were working there with your mom before the war and wanted to keep the lease active, then we would be happy to help you see it through, Hermione explained. Draco waved over a tall woman with blue hair and green eyes. Raven, this is Phelan. Her mother was Flo of Flo's Flowers. Raven beamed and smiled at Phelan. We are going to put her in a room at the Leaky. Can you please help her with whatever she needs? Of course. Lovely to meet you. Raven began to lead Phelan down the street towards the Leaky Cauldron, guiding her gently by the arm. My father used to buy flowers from your store before the war. It was the highlight of my mother. Wait. Phelan looked around to find Hermione and Draco in a panic. I don't have any money, she said, her cheeks flaming in embarrassment. Oh, don't worry. The tab for your stay will be covered under the War Relief Fund, Raven explained. The witch reminded her a little of Luna. She had the same sweet disposition and dreamy expressions. It had been one of the reasons why she had advised Tom to hire her to manage displaced citizens. Her demeanor would be reassuring to an already suspicious crowd, and depending how long was left on the lease, then the only thing we will need to worry about is finding a way to get you back in stock. Raven's voice trailed off as they drifted out of earshot. There, see? I didn't scare her off, Draco smirked smugly. Hermione, Theo called, jogging down the street toward her again. His pink boots prevented him from running very fast, though it didn't stop him from needing a minute to catch his breath while he leaned against his knees. There you are, bloody hard woman to track down, he panted. Louis stopped by the hospital looking for you. He said you and Jen needed to go see him and Renaud as soon as possible. Hermione's heart started thumping in her chest. Renaud was casual in the way he handled business with her, treating her more like an old friend than a new business acquaintance. So for him to want to see them so urgently, it had to be big. Hermione looked around. They had so much to do here, still before the day would be through. Right now? Theo smirked at her. It must be so hard being popular, he joked. Hermione poked her tongue at him. Yeah, well, you wouldn't know. Theo made a dramatic stumbling motion with his hand over his chest. You wound me, princess. The apothecary was restored to its former glory, and the jeweler's next door was halfway done before she managed to get away. Ginny met her on the back patio as she arrived at the chateau. Any idea what this is about? She asked. Hermione shook her head before they were away again, Draco and Blaise following behind them. No, but I suppose there's only one way to find out, she mumbled as they landed in the foyer of the building that housed the French ministry offices. By now, Renaud's staff knew who she was and didn't bat an eye when she walked through to his main office. Celine, his secretary, waved them on through without looking up from her paper. Still, Hermione felt it was polite to knock before barging in. Ah, there she is, Renaud said with excitement. In his office sat two official-looking wizards in fine robes decorated with brightly colored embroidery, neither of whom looked familiar to her. Louis was standing in the corner behind Renaud with a warm smile on his face. Hi, you wanted to see us, Hermione smiled, hesitantly, slipping into the room to allow the others to enter as well. Hermione, this is the Prime Minister of Portugal, and this is his head of security. We were just discussing the latest speculations regarding Alicia, and your name came up, Renaud indicated to the wizard opposite him, giving her a small, barely decipherable nod. Oh, I see. Hello, pleasure to meet you both. Hermione stepped towards the men who had stood to offer her a handshake. Leonardo's eyes narrowed on her and gripped her hand a little too tightly, and Hermione gave him a thin, cold smile. Mr. Bright, what seems to be the problem? I do not trust people who can flip their allegiances overnight, he growled. Hermione hummed and squeezed his hand tighter. Then it's a good thing it wasn't overnight then, Please settle down, Nikolai sighed, placing his hand on his guard's shoulder. He moved past him and offered him his hand. Rumors out of Italy are that Alicia is blaming you for the crash in her popularity. She says that you orchestrated it all, that somehow you brainwashed people, says that you turned people against her. Hermione knew that her smile said too much, but she also saw the impressed, sparkling glint in the minister's eyes. I'm sorry to hear that she's having such a hard time, but I hardly see how it could possibly be my fault. She wouldn't even hear our proposal when we approached her. I was there for maybe 20 minutes, and she practically yelled at us the entire time, Hermione offered sweetly. The minister hummed while Renaud and Louis tried to hide their amusement. Renaud here was just telling me about how impressed he is with your ideas for the future. He told me that he's had the opportunity to view some of your inventions, but when asked to elaborate, he could not. Hermione gave him a knowing smile. That is correct. If you would like to view them, then you would need to sign contracts first. Safety precaution. I can't have people taking my ideas and whatnot. I'm sure you understand. Of course. Now, what's this I hear about taking on the International Confederation of Wizards? It was my goal to remove the statute of secrecy. Leandra's booming laugh drowned out the rest of what she had to say. You'll be wasting yours and everyone else's time with that little girl, he said. Both Renaud and Louis looked to the floor and let out long, low whistles. Blaise and Ginny sighed and Draco growled. Watch yourself. Stepping toward the man, but Hermione immediately blocked his path. Renaud chuckled. I wouldn't insult or minimize Hermione in any way if I were you. He put one of my guards in the hospital the night we met. I would like to see him try. Leandra snipped. You really wouldn't, Blaise hummed from the corner, while Ginny mumbled that she would. Hermione shot her a warning glare, to which Ginny responded with a smug smirk. Let's all calm down, shall we? Leandra, sit down. I want to hear more about this.